Alright everybody, this is Tim Raxworthy here with a review of the new Witchwomb project by Rachel Lilim. So this is a 10-page internet PDF which combines mainly prose, kind of poetry with a couple of these more experimental lo-fi images. Mrs. Lilim seems to be interested in really combining something that's more of like a spoken word, rhythmic kind of piece, not one which is more kind of story oriented. This is what kind of first made me gravitate towards it. I was very interested in it because it was definitely a kind of spin on a lot of some of her older things, her other works, which I've read. She had written a piece for Misery Tourism, which I'll link down in the description, called Slicey Slicey, which was a very, very direct and portrait. It was a very direct portrait about this particular female character, which Witchwomb also mainly centers around a female character who is trapped in this world where there's all this greed and people are very interested in sexualizing her, controlling her, especially with cameras pointed at her and all these things, and she's live streaming it, and she's self-harming herself on the camera, and people are interested in it, and they're typing out all these comments and liking it and everything. And I think it ends with her killing herself on camera, but it's a very short piece, very direct, and kind of lays the groundwork for a similar character in Witchwomb. But the difference is in Witchwomb, it's way more movement in it, and it's less about just describing the character's descent into, ruination, degradation, all these things that I think a lot of people have come to understand in culture, especially with hypersexualization and the growing acceptance of pornography. What's interesting in Witchwomb is that it's about moving beyond. It's almost as if the end of that story is the beginning of Witchwomb, and the end of Witchwomb is a new beginning. And I haven't seen a lot of people work in thinking about things in this way, which is why I was really enjoying reading it through it multiple times. It's very short. You can read it in less than 5 minutes, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to read multiple times because it's not like a story. It's a bit of a story, but it's a bit more of kind of like, to me at least, seems like sort of an incantation or something more along the lines of something you read out loud. That's kind of what gives it a very special property, because it really is like you start at the beginning in this world where you start out in this world in the beginning where things are very bleak. She uses words like creak, infirm, bleak, wave drone, and it's all about being next to the water. And as you make your way to the middle, you then ascend up into the staircase, into this, it seems to me like a glass house. And there's still sort of like watery elements, but you've moved away from this degraded shoreline world and you start ascending into this very beautifully descripted setting. But it's very abstract, and I think it's the wording here is less about really the setting and more about the character's movement through it. And then eventually you get to the end, which is a sort of a conception at the end with this birthing, and sort of this is where this character came from. So there's like a whole kind of start to finish, but it's sort of flipped, where the ending, which seems like the end, where it seems like everything's gone to shit, everything's terrible, you move through it, and then you get to this new beginning where there's a rebirth that occurs. It's definitely still focused on this young, tortured female character, very similar to some of her other works. I definitely would like to see more art and expression kind of surrounding this topic, just because normally when things like this do get brought up, there's a tendency to just jump to, okay, things have just gotten worse, society's just gotten worse, we have all these things that make us feel degraded, and especially in a lot of cases women who feel very trapped with cameras, social media, all these things. But to reinvent and to create something that takes all that pain and suffering and transforms it into something that is like a lyric or a chant, something that is meant to move you and in some ways resurrect you, is something that I really would like to see more. It's definitely not what I think culturally really what's going on. So it's uniqueness, very exceptional work. I would like to see, it is very short, the images they do give a sense of it being something that's sort of lost and hard to find, which definitely reflects the subject matter too. But I think that there's a lot more here that could be expanded upon, which I definitely will look forward to seeing future works from Rachel Lilim. It says that she does, on her website, which I'll also link, it says that she does photography, music, and writing, but for the most part, the things that I've seen on the website that I've perused through her work, it seems like for the most part it's writing that she's focused on. It is really amazing to have things like this come to fruition. They're very culturally important, I think. They help people who are struggling through these things, and especially using a literary form, it's very impactful. There's like an emphasis on language and speaking, but it's done in a very experimental way, so it feels very new, it feels very fresh, but the only thing that's really holding it back is that it is fairly short, and the combination of pictures and words is good, but I think the words are really where the power lies in this particular piece. In some ways it seems like the pictures are like a separate work and kind of try to fill maybe what the words lack, but really, at least for me, it seems like the words are the most powerful part of it. I can understand wanting to try to give more to people who are reading it, but that can also be done by just expanding the length of this, or maybe making it into a song. That's all up to what the artist's intentions are, what they want to do. Definitely, it is a pretty interesting piece, and I would recommend anybody to check it out.